Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Playing Garage, where today we are working on my 2002 Cadillac Escalade, which after nearly 250,000 miles has developed a very slight, very occasional lifter tick. So I'm doing the most obvious and logical solution to that. I bought a crappy used engine. Another flawless plan. So, the plan on the Escalade here, or as my daughter likes to call it, the Slayer, after it nearly killed me, or I nearly killed myself with it, however you want to look at it, is to build a new engine. I bought another used block so that I wouldn't have to have a lot of downtime with it because it's my daily driver. So, we're going to rebuild the used motor, slap it in. While we're at it, the front end and suspension has been getting really loose. It does have 247,000 miles on it now, so might get a little suspension freshening while we're at it. But I want to make sure and mention to you that we are celebrating here at Flawless Playing Garage because we have just crossed 1,000 subscribers. I know. I didn't think that would happen either. I guess after watching this, it still might not, because some of you might unsubscribe. Hopefully not. Anyway, 1,000 subscribers is a big deal because it means I can finally turn on monetization with YouTube, which means, yes, I've done the math. I will probably be making up to, but not exceeding, $2.30 a month on this YouTube channel, which I'm really excited about. So to celebrate that, a friend of mine had these awesome stickers made. And if you would like one, I would happily send you one free. Stick around to the end of the video to find out how. Now, let's get rolling. Might be a bad choice of words for a car that rolled over me. Yeah, I'll think of something better later and edit it in. Yeah. So obviously the first step in any razor blade rebuild is to soak it in some degreaser and then attack it voraciously with the power washer, right? I know what you're thinking. You can't do this, dude. You can't fill an engine with water. But in my defense, I was about to immediately completely tear it down and dry it out. So this was not something where I was risking rusting anything inside the motor with the power washer. This was just to get the big gunk off so I could continue tear down and not make quite as much of a mess. So I'm going to try a new method here that I haven't tried before. Some piston clean. Never tried this stuff before. And an ultrasonic cleaner, which I just picked up on Amazon. I think this is the 6.5 liter version, which looks like it will be just big enough to drop a piston into. But I want to clean the rods too, so it sort of fits. It's not fully immersed though, so I'll splash a little more in there and then turn it on and we'll see how this works. Okay, it took quite a while to come up to temperature, so it probably soaked for half an hour, 40 minutes maybe, while it came up to temperature. And then I ran the ultrasonic for 30 minutes. So let's see what it did. And this is probably going to be hot. Well, pretty impressed with what it did on the carbon. There's a little bit left on there that might just wipe off or like gently agitate off. But overall, yeah, gorgeous carbon-wise. Looks like it doesn't take all the grease off, so I might kind of brake clean off some of the heavy grease buildup on the next ones before I dunk them in there. But overall, not too shabby. Well, I've read a lot of reviews on this, 100% Chinesium ultrasonic cleaner. Some said it's completely quiet. Some said it's super loud and annoying. Well, You be the judge if my mic is picking that up. But it's kind of loud, but I don't know. I'm in the garage. Not like I'm trying to sleep. Doesn't bother me. So I have a method after doing a few of these pistons. Step one, start with crappy, carboned up, greasy, nasty looking piston. Strip the rings off of it so that I can get the ring grooves as clean as possible. Step two, about 15 or 20 minutes in the ultrasonic cleaner. Then take it out. Then do a little bit of light scrubbing with a little hand brush, one of the old broken rings in the ring groove, because it gets, you know, like 60–80% of the carbon off on the first go round. So agitation, loosening, scraping gently a little bit with the ring, you know, get the piston a little bit cleaned up, then back into the ultrasonic for like another 5–10 minutes. Then take it out, then a final cleaning where I'll just kind of dip the brush in some of the piston cleaner, clean it up here on the bench, and then, you know, final estimation, nice, clean, shiny piston. That's actually just staining down there. Pretty impressed, like, you know, can even read the original GM etching, and, you know, overall cleans up pretty well. I think it should do nicely, and I'm fairly happy with this decision to do the ultrasonic, because cleaning old carboned up pistons by hand sucks a lot, take an enormous amount of time. This is still going to take a lot of elapsed time with that cleaner having to run for, you know, half an hour total per piston, but that's not my time. I get to do other things while that's running, and my time actually spent manually cleaning, it's pretty minimal, a couple minutes per piston, so that's not a big deal. Overall, fairly happy with this method. I think it's going to work okay. Well, we might have another flawless plan that isn't quite going as expected. When I checked this out, it was in a dark, dirty, wet shed where it had been stored with the heads off. The good part of that was that I could actually take a look inside the motor. There was like kind of surface rust on the cylinder bores, but scraping across it with fingernail, turning the motor over and stuff, it seemed okay. It didn't really seem like any significant pitting was in play. However, there are a couple of spots that are giving me pause now. This being one, so I can actually feel that, and there's some kind of build-up there. I don't know if it's not quite fingernail catching, so we might be okay. And there are a few spots, we can see this with the light, there's a few spots here that I didn't catch when I was inspecting it, but this feels really thin and surfacey. So we'll give that a try. See how it comes out with the hand kind of deglazing hone, and see if we can still avoid any machine shop having to go in and bore this out. Well, after a couple passes with the little 3-jaw hone, I think we're going to be okay. It still looks nasty on camera, but that's really staining to the finger, to the touch. It's pretty minimal, definitely far below like fingernail catch level. I think we're going to be okay. We'll do the rest of the cylinders here and make sure they come out similarly, but overall I think we're going to be okay to keep our budget reasonable on this build. Inspection of the bearings here really is quite encouraging. They are in really very nice shape. Quite frankly, if I wanted to go extremely budget, I could probably reuse these. They're not down through into the copper material anywhere. Rod bearings the same way. They all look pretty good. But as much as I'm trying to keep this budget reasonable, I cannot look myself in the mirror if I have a motor completely apart like this and I don't put new bearings in it. I did mic out the crank, and it looks great too, and it's all standard. The rods are all standard, nothing's been resized in the past, and there's no damage anywhere that looks like it needs to be ground down or anything. So we're just going to go with new standard bearings and everything and clean it up, put it back together. These cam bearings, on the other hand, have seen better days. So these I'll feel good about replacing. You can see we're well into the copper on some of those, and just generally not great in appearance. So these guys are getting dumped, and we'll get some new cam bearings in. Okay, so this particular set, or particular cam bearing removal tool, it comes with a bunch of these different adapters. What it did not come with was instructions. So I took my best guess, and as it turns out, as is frequently the case, my best guess was completely wrong. So when I drove these out, I drove them out this way by, you can see this is segmented and it expands via this little insert. So you slide the insert thing in here, and then as you tighten it down, it will expand to meet the correct diameter. And I used it like this to drive these out, which, you know, pretty much worked. But when putting the new ones in, that creates a real problem because the segments make it really difficult to get like a perfectly even push in on the new bearing. I'm pretty sure I've been doing it backwards. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to put the bearing over the rubber portion of the collar like this. And then this way the bearing is really nicely stabilized. Then as you snug this down, expand the little segments there, then it's all really nicely supported, and it keeps everything nice and square and true, and will install much easier. Because the installation process, if you're trying to do it in this direction, is almost impossible. How do I know it's almost impossible? Well, I destroyed one trying to put them in. You can probably see it got chunked up right here. The whole thing is bent and warped out of shape. Yeah, and it didn't take much to ruin that. So one set of cam bearings junked. Figuring that out, learning the hard way as usual. And so now we've got a new set. And after waiting a week, we can resume the installation process and the building process on the short block. And here is that process. And yes, I know I'm not using the little plastic adapter triangle doohickey to help keep the installation tool perfectly centered in the bore while I tap these in. Yeah, I know. I learned it later. But other than making my life more difficult, they all went in just fine. And not shown in this video very well, but I did verify that those cam bearing holes all lined up properly with the oil passages there in the block. Definitely something that's easy to screw up, but I did double and triple check that. And speaking of double and triple checking things, this is the phase of the build where we put everything together, plastic gauge all of it, double check all the clearances, even though I mic'd everything, torque everything down, then take it all apart and check those plastic gauge measurements. Time to check the clearances. We want that plastic gauge to smush out to somewhere between the 001 and the 0015. And I think we're looking real nice. Check it on the upper bearing shell here as well. Yeah, I think we're in real good shape. Check the rest of them, but I have no real concerns. I did mic out the crank on all the journals, and everything looked real good in spec. So just new standard bearings going in. Okay, say it with me now. I will not add boost to my daily driver. I will not add boost to my daily driver. I will not add boost to my 4L65 transmission. That being said, I might have gone ahead and gapped the rings for boost. Yeah. Oh, buddy. Look at that. Out with that crappy, mild, stock old bump stick. In with the new hotness. Truck Norris. This cam probably deserves better than I'm giving it on this motor. It deserves, you know, forced induction, maybe some head work. It certainly at least deserves long tube headers, which I'm probably not going to do. But nevertheless, it's gorgeous. And if you followed any of the research that Richard Holdner has done with these camshafts, this should both make more torque on the bottom end and more horsepower on the top end. With long tube headers, I think it was around 100 horsepower more on the top end on a 6-liter LQ9 like mine, somewhere in that ballpark. I obviously will not get that without headers, but I really wanted, you know, more power just because, and of course more torque for towing and just general things that are nice to have torque for, even in something that's SUV-like, like the Escalade. Nevertheless, I'm excited. This should do nicely. So while prepping the heads and kind of checking them out a little bit, cleaning them, I always like to shoot some liquid on the backs of the valves and then let it sit and make sure that nothing is leaking through. Well, this one's leaking quite a bit. You can notice like I've still got fluid in these other ones, but not here. And if we look really close, do you see what I see? I'm gonna pull this valve, but that doesn't look good if a person was hoping to not have to do a head rebuild. And some rare good news. There's gunk stuck to the back of this valve. I don't really know what kind of gunk it is, but probably something that just like fell in before the person who like put the motor in storage took the heads off, or like while they were doing that. And yeah, seems okay. Let's take a look at the sealing surface, the valve seat. I really had thought we might see like a dropped or chewed valve seat, but I mean, that looks pretty normal. So, again, in keeping with the spirit of this budget rebuild, I think we're just going to clean this up, put a good surface on them with the stone, put some new valve seals in along with the new springs, and then send it. So I tried a few different ways to compress the valve springs, not having done an LS head before. My first attempt here was with the, you know, parts rental counter massive C-clamp style compressor. I had no luck with that. I also happen to have one of those little handheld style compressors you can see me using here. That actually worked a lot better. There was just enough room to squeeze it in there. But of course, you know, doing this 16 times, your hands get tired spinning that dial up and down. So I took the little dial handle off. Underneath it is a hex head, and then I could use my little impact driver to spin the tool up and down pretty quickly, and that really helped speed me up moving down the row on this head to get those valve seals and valve springs replaced. So really just a quick freshening of the heads. They actually looked really, you know, pretty good. So new springs, new valve seals. Most of the stuff that came out was just old and crusty, but there was one broken valve spring. So glad that planned on upgrading those anyway. Then a quick surface on the bottom of these with a little flat stone here, just making sure everything is flat and has a good, you know, kind of the correct amount of bite to it for the head gaskets. Still got some cleaning to do on these, but otherwise I'm just going to run these. I had debated having them professionally rebuilt, but frankly everything looks pretty good. So I'm just going to run them, and just trying to get rid of one more weak spot in the LS. We're going to do a trunnion upgrade on the stock rocker arms. So I got this kit from Summit Racing, I'm fairly certain that they said in the advertisement or in the listing that it had oil grooves cut into the, whatever these are, bronze or brass bushings. I thought they had the oil grooves cut into them to help make sure that you've got good oil flow around, the outside of this trunnion. This definitely does not. I'm going to go with it anyway. The main times that you would see these kinds of upgrades is when you're trying to run high RPMs. And that's definitely not my goal with this car. Don't really care what it does at 7,000 RPM. So this should be just more protection than is really needed on this motor. But it doesn't hurt to do a little upgrading while you're in there, right? Right. Now it's time to get real about assembly. So the pistons, those are the used original pistons, cleaned to within an inch of their lives, going back in, but with new rings in the stock size bores, just kind of hand honed out a little bit, all coming back together, and then a fresh set of stock style head bolts and the cleaned up cylinder heads. Okay, so this is the timing gear and oil pump drive that goes on the end of the crankshaft. It needs to go another 1/4 inch or so on. So obviously tight, kind of a press fit. If I was smart, what I would have done is kept the old pulley, which was broken, and I would have ground out the inside of it a little bit to clearance it, and then use that and the bolt to kind of suck this down and tighten this up. I wasn't that smart. I threw it away already. So instead, I have this 1.25 inch rigid PVC conduit coupler from Home Depot for $4, which fits nicely there and also happens to be just about the perfect size for the washer to catch, the built-in washer on the crank pulley bolt. The only problem is that it's just a fuzz too long right now, so I can't get the thread engagement with the bolt. So I'm going to cut a little bit of it off, like so, and hopefully then we can use this to just gently persuade this gear all the way onto the crank. And, spend $4 on a Home Depot version of the tool instead of buying the correct tool to do this job. We'll see how this flawless plan goes. Nice. I think that worked just about perfectly. Nice and snug. My my cut wasn't perfectly straight, so the adapter was a little wonky, but pushed it on nice and straight. Good to go. Quick, did you see that? Oh, I think you might have missed it. I timed the engine there. I still remember timing my Metzger air-cooled Porsche 911 engine when I rebuilt it. I researched the proper procedures for several days and then spent 4 hours actually doing it, versus the 10 seconds or so it takes to set timing on a small block Chevy. Yeah, I can understand why these are popular. Now, the last couple of times I did this on Chevy trucks, I removed the radiator core support and the radiator and AC condenser, getting that system evacuated because I was swapping everything over anyway. And man, was it easy to work with once all that front end stuff was out of the way. This time, I just redid the AC like a year ago in the Escalade, so I really didn't want to evacuate it and deal with all that. So I left the AC condenser in place. And because of that, it was really pointless to remove the core support, radiator, etc. That was just a waste of time. I should have left that alone. And, well, foreshadowing, next time I will. All right, here's my DIY El Cheapo 4-corner steam kit. So first of all, crossover tube here, and just another one of these same crossover tubes in the back. Then just some 1/4 inch fuel hose, basically, connected to that crossover tube in the back, looped around, a T, 1/4 inch with 1/4 inch fittings on it from the hardware store, some hose clamps. Half of this stuff I had laying around already, and it just goes, one end into the T from the crossover tube here, and one end into the throttle body here. So no other fittings or craziness required. Pretty simple. This is maybe, I don't know, maybe $20 worth of materials. And there you go, 4-corner kit. No fancy AN fittings and lines required. It's the hottest time of day. It's the hottest day of the year. I've spent all day out here since 5 a.m. trying to get this thing wrapped up. Let's hope this is it. Let's try a first start. So for those keeping score at home, we have non-stock fuel injectors. We have some kind of previous aftermarket tune that was on this ECU, pretty sure. And we have the Truck Norris, non-stock cam, and a bunch of other new parts. What could possibly go wrong? Let's just see if it will fire. We have oil in the sump. We have coolant. Other fluids are probably still in there. Probably. Let's see what happens. Holy crap, it started. See if it's puking any fluids. Not a big surprise, didn't want to stay running with that cam. I have oil pressure. It does run as long as I keep the throttle open a little bit. Just won't idle. Well, now that it's all put together, now it's time to see if I can actually make it run properly. I've actually done quite a bit of work just to get it to the point where it idles reasonably well. Not perfect, but reasonably well. Starts every time, doesn't throw a bunch of errors. And we're now into the VE tuning of this. So in very, very rough terms, what I'm attempting to do here is tune the volumetric efficiency table, which is sort of the base table on a Gen 3 LS motor. Then I'm going to do some tuning and make sure that the MAF, the mass airflow sensor curve, is roughly accurate. Then I will attempt to put some timing in it. So trying to get an HP tuner device in order to do this tuning has been quite a challenge. You can't really find them and buy them used, thanks to the EPA, making it difficult to advertise them. You can't buy them new right now, again, I assume thanks to the EPA, but hopefully they're coming back later with a new version. You just can't buy it yet. Thankfully, a gentleman that I met when I sold him the old engine out of this car was willing to loan me his, basically a stranger from the internet, and he was willing to loan me his HP Tuners device and help me out with some stuff. Huge thank you to Brian. Thank you very much. Enormous help to help me get over this hurdle and actually get this thing on the road. And of course, there's some flawless plans here along the way as well, like my high quality air fuel ratio gauge mount. Yes, that's a cell phone mount stuck to the dash with some, why settle for cardboard aided design when you can use cardboard as the final medium as well? Yeah. Definitely a temporary setup. But between that and the cords we got going everywhere and the laptop and keeping the battery charged on the laptop, we'll see how this goes. I have a limited amount of time with the tuner. Just need to get it roughly workable. And, roughly workable, and also able to take my family to the coast for a family vacation here in a couple weeks. Yeah, this should work well. So yes, somewhat predictably, what we have here once again is yet another flawless plan, flawlessly executed. So I've been waiting this whole time for the other shoe to drop. Everything went so smoothly. The engine rebuild, the replacement, the suspension rebuild, even selling the old engine that I didn't need anymore, all went really slick and really smooth. Things even took about the amount of time I expected them to, until now. Now I don't have oil pressure when it gets hot. Case in point, so this is after probably about 100 miles of driving and tuning, and it just kept getting a little progressively worse. So when the engine's cold, like you can see here, I've got 40 PSI at idle, and as you rev it up, it does increase, although, maybe could be a little better. But now you can see by the coolant temp gauge, we've got a warm engine. with significantly less fuel pressure at idle, more like 20 than 40, and then see how as I rev it up, it really doesn't build pressure. This is with the car sitting level, so let's try it with the nose down. So the theory on this test is you overfill the oil by a couple quarts, then put the nose of the truck down, and it'll swamp the front of the oil pickup tube in case that O-ring isn't sealing and it's sucking in air. But as you can see, no change. I don't know what's going on. Probably it's a bearing issue. You know, usually when this kind of stuff happens, it's a bearing clearance issue. I plastic gauged the bearings. I replaced the cam bearings. I replaced the mains. I replaced the rod bearings. I plastic gauged all that stuff except the cam, obviously. I don't know. I just don't. We'll see. At some point, relatively soon, this will get torn down again so I can see what's going on. But in the meantime, I have agreed to help out my sister with a job on her vehicle. So I've got to switch and get that done. And the big trip we had planned to take this on for family vacation, not so much. I wonder if we can put a family of 5 in my Corvair with no heat and no air conditioning and headers that are so loud that you can't hear yourself think on the highway for 14 hours to the coast. Yeah, that'd probably work out real well. Maybe I should rent something. To be continued eventually. So if somehow you are one of the precious few who have made it here to this part of the video, if you're interested in a sticker and would like to adorn your vehicle, your water bottle, your trash can, your toilet, wherever it is that reminds you of the projects and the quality of work I do here on this channel, send me an email to flawlessplangarage@gmail.com. Just all one thing. flawlessplangarage@gmail.com. Send me your address. I will happily mail you out one of these to the first like dozen people. I think I have enough stickers for that. If you shoot me an email, if I actually get a dozen people that watch this video and want a sticker, I'll be amazed. If it's more than that, well, sorry. It's the supply that I have. So thanks again. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. And if anybody has any ideas of what can cause low oil pressure on an Escalade, I'm all ears. This is going to take a little head scratching. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.